Welcome to the Best 5-Minute Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Forrest Kelly. From the seed to the glass, wine has a past. Our aim at the Best 5-Minute Wine Podcast is to look for adventure at wineries around the globe. After all, grape minds think alike. Let's start the adventure. Our featured winery is... In this episode, we head to the state with the most golf courses. Approximately 1,000 people move here each day. The state's highest natural point is only 345 feet above sea level, and it makes it the flattest state in America. We head to the Sunshine State, Florida, to Lakeridge Winery and Vineyards.
Yeah, my name is Barry Hoos, and I am the Chief Operating Officer here, basically just in charge of making sure everything runs smoothly.
Before we find out about the winery, let's find out a little bit about Barry. How do you become COO of Lakeridge Winery and Vineyards?
That's kind of a long story, but I was a firefighter and a paramedic, and I got hurt.
This was in your 20s?
I was in my 40s. I'm 63 now. So on my days off, when the early 90s came around, I got really into the internet, like when it first came out, programming and designing and things. And I had on my days off, most firemen do something on their days off. I had a web design company. It was in the small town next over from Clermont in Winter Garden. And I think it was in 2000, Charles Cox, the president, and one of the family members come walking into my office and said, I need websites for my winery. So at that time, I built their websites and started handling their IT stuff, and I became friends with Charles over the years. And then I eventually sold that company and went to work for another client of mine, helping them rebuild some factories and doing some of that kind of stuff. I was working for them and was at home and kind of semi-retired. The winery had continued to grow, and Charles got with me, and I'd stayed friends with them and continued to do their IT work. He said, I need to hire a COO. We're just getting too big. I need another level of management here. So I was helping him vet people. We were looking for someone qualified to do the job. He knew that I had been at that level of employment. So I was helping look at somebody, and we found somebody that we thought would be really good. And when we offered them the job, they got a promotion where they were. So they stayed. And he just said, why don't you do it? And so for about 3 months, I said, no, I'm pretty comfortable. Here. And my wife and I talked about that. I'm like, that would be a great challenge. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I know the family well. I've known them for 15 years. They've always treated me well. I said, I think I could do a lot of good over there. So I took the job 5 years ago, and it's been a blessing. I mean, it's been a great experience.
Something that I didn't realize until I was doing some research for this interview was the rich history of Florida wine.
Florida started out as the wine industry back in the early days when the settlers came over here. They discovered that these muscadine grapes were here in Florida, so they tried to make wine out of them, didn't particularly like the flavor of it. They went ahead and brought over their own varieties from Europe. At one time, there were thousands of acres of grapes here in Florida, but they discovered that in this climate, they just wouldn't grow. There's actually a bacteria that gets in the vines, and it leads to what's now called Pierce disease. And so when all the vines died out after a couple of years, they eventually moved everything out to the West Coast. The wine industry kind of fell off here, of course, and it wasn't until the 80s, early 80s, when families like the Cox family, who started Lakeridge, decided that they were going to reinvigorate the wine industry here, and they were going to make wine out of the native muscadine grapes that grow here naturally. They failed at first, and then they kept trying and eventually got the formula right and the recipe right, and we're here today as Florida's largest winery.
Now, when you say largest winery, does that mean just visitors, or is that production?
Yeah, we're Florida's largest by both, by visitorship and production. We are about 150, 160,000 case a year winery, which is by far the largest here in the state. That's selling grape wines. There are a lot of the other wineries here. There's only, 22, 24 wineries in the state. It's not a big industry here. And a lot of those are fruit wines, mostly blueberry wines, because blueberries grow well here. There are a few like us that do grape wines, but we're by far the largest.
Thank you for listening. I'm Forrest Kelly. This episode of the Best 5-Minute Wine Podcast was produced by iHism. If you like the show, Please tell your friends and pets and subscribe. Until next time, pour the wine and ponder your next adventure.
This is Doug Vincent with the podcast Walk and Roll Live, Disability Stories. In 1956, I contracted polio. Thanks to my loving parents, I've lived a full, rich life over the past 67 years. Join me as I share my journey and uncover inspiring stories of resilience. This podcast is a platform for survivors of disability and those who champion services for the disabled community. Tune in on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Let's walk and roll together on this incredible journey of strength and empowerment.